Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order, please. And the first order of business would be the approval of minutes of the April 28th, 2008 Finance Committee. May I please have a motion? And a second? And a vote, please?
Aye.
Minutes are so approved. Gary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments, and there are no changes to the work plan, sir.
Okay. Then what I'd like to do is ask Sharon, please, to take us to the Budget Watch.
Okay. I'll be giving you an update on where we are right now, and Gary DeLavison will follow me with a framework for these results. On passenger and toll revenues, we're still modestly above the budget year to date, with less than a percentage favorable. Our expenses are also basically on budget for the year to date. However, on the expense side, of course, fuel is starting to show up in our results as being unfavorable to our budget. The month of April, our year-to-date variance as of April is we're close to $9 million unfavorable, which is 56% over what we budgeted. Almost all of, except for $2 million, all of this was in the month of April. So it's something that we're going to be watching very, very closely in terms of what we've budgeted. On the taxes, the petroleum business taxes through May are running a little bit better than planned, but our discussions with the state indicate that this could be timing. So we're not drawing any conclusions at this juncture. As far as the real estate taxes, May was not a good month for us. The year-to-date is now close to $81 million below what we had budgeted. If you recall, last month we were at $43 million unfavorable. Collections of 3 of the 4 real estate taxes were poorer than last month, and none of the taxes achieved its forecast level. So that's basically where we are at this point.
Gary, do you want to comment on this? I'm sorry to interrupt, Sharon, but I think this obviously has a significant impact on our operating budget, and I thought our Chief Financial Officer would like to talk about this.
Yeah, just to provide, I guess, a little bit of context that's, I think, relatively consistent with the frame that we've been talking about over what's now 3 months. This is the 3rd month now that we've detected this very substantial weakening. So let me talk about, I guess, in a couple of pieces. So, we're obviously watching on the revenue side, and we've talked about this before, we're obviously watching 3 particular indicators particularly carefully, and that's ridership, that's the corporate surcharge, and that's real estate revenues. So let me just talk about the first one first, which is ridership. So ridership continues to be above the elevated level that we had projected when you adopted the budget in December, and that's the good news. The rate of the rate has actually started to now narrow between the beginning of the year to now, which causes a little bit of concern, not an unbelievable amount yet, but a little bit of concern. And there are in the environment there are 2 confounding things that are going on. So one is there is increased pressure on ridership, a positive thing because of fuel prices. But remember that we capture such a very substantial portion right now of our targeted market. More than 80% of the to-work market. That the amount of discretionary ridership that can be affected by the impact of fuel is relatively modest. In other words, because we already capture such a substantial portion of the market already in the going-to-work market, there's a relatively modest percentage that can be accessed as a result of high fuel prices. On the other hand, and this is the area where there's some level of concern, we are very highly dependent, almost, it's a very predictive indicator on employment. And for example, the March statistics for the 5-borough employment continue to be high, but we do know that there are very substantial amounts of layoffs that are either in the pipeline or are occurring right now as we speak, particularly in the financial services sector. We have not yet seen the impact of that rolling through our ridership, but it's probably fair to say that we will see that. So on the ridership side, again, although we are holding to slightly above budget, which is a positive thing in this environment, I think we have to keep our eye on both of those pieces and see how it is that they at the end of the day, what the bottom line of those two confounding factors turns out to be. So that's an area that we're watching very carefully, as carefully as we can. On the subsidy side, and I thought actually that our colleague Mark Page at the city budget director, when the city put out its executive budget recently, spoke well on, which was the fact that the corporate subsidy art surcharge tax is high, and there's a corollary with New York City, could be misleading in the sense that it's the way that corporations file their taxes. There may be an advantage to their having filed in March their quarterlies at a relatively robust level that could be subject to substantial revision in subsequent quarters. The city noted it in their presentation. We're continuing to see that portion of our subsidy stream as strong, but it is an area of concern. We obviously know that that profits in the financial sector, which our economy is very driven by, have the nicest word one could use would be softened. So that's an area also that we have to pay very particular attention to. Lastly, in the area that we're most concerned about, obviously, is the yellow flags that we've described over the past several months about the real estate transaction taxes. So let me just take 1 second to talk about that. As you know, we've now seen a couple of months where across the board all 4 categories are performing badly against budget. And remember that the budget, as you all recall, was brought down by more than 20% against last year's proceeds, and we're continuing to run very substantially below that, and we're now negative $81 million year to date. I would hesitate to draw a straight line from that to the end of the year. I would also hesitate to say that we know that we're at the bottom of that, or do we believe that we're the beginning of an uptick. It is something that we have to just watch on a very careful basis. The urban tax, which is the portion which captures the commercial surcharge, the commercial transfer tax, is the one that is most subject to volatility and has been performing particularly badly. In that regard, though, I'll note that there are a number of transactions that are being reported as being underway in the real estate marketplace as a result of, probably the easiest way to be described it would be distress sales, but that may not be the perfect way to describe it, but they're very substantial. And in the event that those transactions do go through in the next month, as they are reported to be underway, that could create a fairly substantial amount of money that would come through the pipe. I would not look at that as a harbinger of good things to come, but I would say that cash money is cash money, and if 30 or 40 million came through the pipe that was unexpected, that would be a very positive event. Again, probably would not be the kind of thing that we would look at as a harbinger, as an indicator of the market turning around. So obviously the key here is something that is very difficult for us to predict, which is whether or not we're looking at the beginning of a very bad market that's going to be prolonged, or whether or not the current downturn in the market is going to be shallow. So there are some indicators, for example, the fact that interest rates remain low and have actually dropped over the last 30 days is a good sign in terms of recovery in the market. The fact that's something that you'll be talking about in an hour or so also shows confidence in the commercial real estate market in New York. But again, we've talked about the yellow flag being up. The yellow flag stays up. It's an area that we are watching as carefully as we can. And we'll be discussing with you not only next month, but obviously as we begin to think about the presentation of the July financial plan.
Okay, next item on our agenda is action items, and Gary, do you want to take us through the New York Power Authority?
I do have a question, if Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I have a question. So the $81 million obviously is a lot of money, and it has to be taken care of. How much is $81 million in the entire operating budget? I see that it's, almost 15% difference here in the real estate tax summary, but in the overall operating budget.
The operating budget is about $11 billion, just under $11 billion. So it's...
So I should get the calculator? Okay.
Well, if
Thanks.
you want. I don't think the point, Commissioner Watt, is that this will, plunge us from where we are. It's to identify sensitive areas of the budget as we do in finance. It's areas that we have to pay particular concern and apply, substantial attention, because this is a problematic area that is not only that's continuing. This is not. We have not said, and we are not saying that we are out of balance. That would be a crisis, obviously, because we have to maintain a self-sustaining budget. We are not out of balance. We remain in balance. We are projected to end this calendar year with a surplus. We continue to expect to end with a surplus, albeit smaller. But that'll all be a conversation as we get to July.
And what would you suggest we do about this one?
Well, I don't think there's a thing that we can do about whether or not we
that's
can
all I
affect the
mean.
proceeds. Right. There's other actions, obviously, that we do control the
Obviously,
budget.
right.
I think the importance of this is that last year, remember, we gradually had a positive balance. We actually took in more, and people were not saying that we were saying all along we were taking in more, and everybody thought that $200 million was a surprise. It wasn't. This year, it may be the other side of the mountain, and we're just saying as loudly as we can, this is a problem. We've identified it. We're telling everybody every month. We're going to continue to tell everybody any month. We don't want it to be a surprise. We don't want the writing public to be a surprise, and you will hear about it from here to the end of the year, and we can't predict the future. We just want you to all know this could be a big problem. It isn't yet. We're still in balance, just like Gary said, but nobody misunderstand. We're telling you so it doesn't end up being a surprise later on.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the New York Power Authority long-term contract, which is an action item. Gary, do you want to just
The
make
item
the
is on,
presentation, and then I think we're going to have a presentation by some of the experts in this area, because it is confusing.
the item is on page 15 of your book with the reso on page 19, and Gary DeLavison and Jesse Sandberg will give the presentation on it.
Jesse's prepared to answer any detailed questions that you have. This is the action is we participate with the city, with the port, as government customers with NYPA. NYPA needs to replace some of its in-house generation capacity. NYPA both generates power for its governmental customers as well as to the marketplace, as well as purchasing power in the marketplace on our behalf, and as well as the other government customers, New York City and the Port Authority. We, MTA, are 31% customers of the NYPA output. There is the part of this that isn't a question is, do we need power? Yes, we need power. And do we want to utilize NYPA as the vehicle for our procurement of power? And the answer to that is we have been, and it continues to be a benefit to us, cheaper than market, obviously. This is a procurement because NYPA needs to replace some of its generation capacity as a result of what's called the Paletti plant going offline. This is a particular procurement that we are supporting NYPA in, as are the other governmental customers, in which there's a 500 megawatt procurement with in Astoria, where the existing plant is and where the recent plant was constructed. So this is authority for us to authorize them to complete the procurement. MTA, as the other government customers participated in the procurement. The procurement itself is NYPA to Astoria. This is us to NYPA. So this is authorization for us to NYPA. The procurement itself, obviously, is not ours. It's the power authority to the vendor, which is Astoria. And then Jesse, as I said, is present for any questions that you have about the RFP itself.
I have a question, Jesse. What I understand, for the first 17 years, which is the existing contract that's yet to run, plus the additional part, because this Paletti plant is being taken offline, what will be the incremental increase in the total cost of the MTA for the first 17 years of this contract and for the ensuing additional, 20 years or whatever you're adding on, because of the fact that we have to build or participate in building this new plant.
I mean, if you'll just look at the economics that we included, we are going to pay Astoria to put up that plant. We've got a couple of different options about how we operate it, how NYPA operates it on our behalf, and then that plant will sell its energy back into the market. The net of that is $350 million over 20 years, or roughly $17.5 million a year. In the entire, we pay NYPA for 2009 an estimated $350 million for electricity in New York City for all of the agencies. Of that, about $50 million is a pass-through to Con Edison for the pipes and wires. But, we've estimated several times over the years since 2005 that our relationship with NYPA saves about 25% against having to buy electricity on the market from Con Edison and other suppliers. So it has an impact of about $17.5 million a year. That's roughly about 5% of the NYPA bill. And if that's the worst that happens to us over the next years, we'd be in very good shape. As you know, gas prices are going up. Con Ed has a new rate case that's coming along. So I think we had consultants there. I spent a lot of time there. The city spent a lot of time there. And this was really the best deal that we could have gotten.
I just wanted to point out, as you did, that this was something that the city also spent a significant amount of time on. It's enormously complex. But add to that, something that sort of gets overlooked is that building this new power plant actually is cleaner energy, which will overall reduce costs basically citywide, both in the system and outside the system. So not only does this give us value within the MTA, it's going to give value throughout the entire grid and throughout the entire system. So I know possibly later we'll talk about sustainability. This is besides investing in transportation, probably the next best thing the MTA can do in order to improve the environment, which is to enter into long-term contracts for energy, which helps us financially, but also benefits our customers, citizens, as well as the environment. So just a point that I thought needed to be made.
Any other comments? Okay, I guess we need a vote. We need a motion, please. Second. We have a second and a vote, please. The item is, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself from this item.
So noted. Thank you. May we please have a vote?
If ever there was an obvious recusal, that would be. That was it.
Okay. May we please have a vote? Okay. Motion is approved. Action item is approved. Next item on the agenda is the procurements, and I'd ask Gary Lanigan to take us through, please.
Let me come back one item, Mr. Chair. There is a second action item for the station maintenance billing on page 21 of your books. This is an annual item that the committee approves, and it's for the MTA to send out the bills for the station maintenance to New York City and the counties.
I just have one question.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Do all the counties pay?
Yes, they do. We've not had a problem with any payments on these.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, please. And a vote, please. Your action.
Excuse me? The
state
state
has
controller
revenues.
can intercept revenues if the payment is not made. We've not had to enforce that, though.
That's not on all bills to local governments.
That's not on all local bills, but it
station
is on
maintenance,
this,
but not on
station
others.
maintenance. That's correct.
Thanks.
Okay. We have a motion, a second. May we please have a vote? The action item is approved. Gary, would you please take us into the procurements?
Yes, the MTA headquarter procurements, there are a total of 8, grand total of $7,727,227. Of those, one is non-competitive. I'll do these separate. That's on page 29 of your book, and that's for $236,000 for Kurt Edgar. and that's for independent engineering consultant at the East Side Access and other programs. Do you want, okay, there are 6 competitive procurements, and the chair has asked that I point out the Oracle procurement for $2,494,515.96. While we have Oracle procurements listed not only for headquarters, but there are also Oracle procurements in the Long Island Railroad section and the Bridge and Tunnel section. Our Chief Information Officer, Wael Hebrew, is here with the information officers from the agencies to explain how the activities for these contracts are coordinated, because they are Oracle.
My question was, obviously, since this is such a major, we've got quite a few of these Oracle procurements. They range from a lot of different, from the headquarters to different agencies, and also, as you know, this is a very big, major go-forward plan for us with the shared services and everything else that's included in that. I was wondering why we don't have one contract and one negotiation rather than have the different various agencies and headquarters, negotiating. It seems to be separate contracts, and I was questioning, does this affect our ability, obviously, to get the best possible price because of volume?
Sure. I think, Commissioner, you'll be pleased to know that we have one contract for all of the licenses for Oracle for Oracle Hyperion and Oracle database systems that have any relationship to do with the Shared Services Center. This board approved in May last year the purchase of a single enterprise license agreement that will allow the MTA as separate agencies or for one shared services center to implement human resources and financial systems to support the Shared Services Center initiative. And we went ahead and we purchased that in May of last year, which was strategically timed at the end of the fiscal year of Oracle, where we could extract the greatest discounts we could, and we were able to secure 80% discounts off their list price and lower our maintenance fees for the upcoming 5 years and thereafter fixed at a certain step increases. That was done back then, and since then the MTA headquarters have pretty much administered that enterprise contract, enterprise licensing agreement for the entire MTA. The staff summary you have here includes purchases for 3 agencies under that contract, which would automatically inherit favorable conditions that we have embedded in that agreement. The agencies have moved with their own staff summaries for the purchase of implementation services, consulting services that are not part of our software license agreement, and because of that, they have gone through their own committees for approval on these initiatives and forward to the board itself.
But you talk of an 80% discount. The one, for example, on page 32 calls for a 50% off the book discount,
Sure.
and I didn't look at the other ones.
Sure.
I mean, I still don't understand why we don't take this and have one. Why are we giving these out piecemeal? Why don't we have one blanket contract to cover all these different license agreements?
Sure. At the time that we made the purchase in May of 2007, Oracle was in the process of buying Hyperion as a company, so we were in a period where Oracle could not offer us discounts or any products through a company that they had not concluded the purchase of. So shortly thereafter, they were able to complete that and get approval for buying that company, and now Hyperion is a part of the Oracle family of products and family of companies. So we needed to buy these products at this time. Hyperion is a product that's used by a number of agencies, and the only time we could include it under Oracle is after the conclusion of this merger or purchase by Oracle.
That's my point. Why don't we now get the 80% discount? In other words, why don't we go back with all these things, since we're doing so much business with them, and get a master contract with everything that's existing here?
There are step discounts based on the volume that you buy. When we purchased $11 million worth of licenses, we got the 80% discount. But if you buy smaller quantities of software, and we reached out to all of the agencies to make that number as comprehensive across the family as possible, It depends on the volume you're buying. So $11 million was able to allow us to get a discount of 80%. However, a smaller number, which is on this staff summary, can only get us 50% discount. And this was negotiated over a long period of time by our procurement department with input from the agencies on what they needed. So we believe we've gotten the best discount we could at the time.
But what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying. What I don't understand, and maybe this is not the form right now to do this, but we're doing this much business with a company like Oracle, and we have these multiple contracts, some existing, some new. We should sit down right now with them, and we should incorporate everything here so that we get the maximum volume discounts for the whole agency that we're entitled to. And if we're getting 80% on these, like you used the number $11 million contract, you started adding up all the procurements that are in this book from bridges. Let's see, there's Long Island Railroad, bridges and tunnels, and the headquarters here. So you have 3 separate procurements here where if you add them together, you're talking about a lot more money, and we should be getting a bigger volume discount. I think these 3 agreements that we're giving out we're overpaying for, considering the amount of volume we're doing, and it should be, this is what we're talking about by doing a bulk purchase or whatever you call it, and this is not what this is, and this is a perfect example where I believe, I haven't looked at this on the surface, it looks like a perfect example where we should be getting a bulk discount on all these things. You're talking about a tremendous amount of money.
Mr. Chairman, what you're saying is correct, and in fact, as Lyle just pointed out, we've spent many hours negotiating with Oracle for these licenses. As you know, this is a very complicated issue, and we think at the time we have a very, very good deal with Oracle. For example, if today, if you do not approve this issue, these contracts, we're going to be charged something like $800,000 more next month. Those are the kind of figures that we're looking at. So we think that this is a very good contract. We continue to engage Oracle. We think you're correct, but this is an ongoing issue. And as we move further with the BSC, obviously we know we have to consolidate and look at these issues more carefully.
Yeah, if I may just...
I may be wrong. I don't know if this is the proper form. Maybe this should be looked into. I don't want to waste a lot of time.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And let me just make my comments briefly. I just want to, thank the chairman for, his vision in terms of shared services and coordinated procurement and other activity. We are in full agreement. Andrew, in terms of the fact that there is a lot of value to be had. We can go in more detail about this specific contract. As you know, we're very pleased that 2 weeks ago we announced the consolidation from a management standpoint, so we have 3 bus companies operating as one. We have the 2 commuter railroads working in unprecedented fashion in terms of looking how they can partner and work together from a procurement standpoint, from a management standpoint. Some work had been done before, but it's being taken to another level. And so in the area of IT, my sense of this procurement that you have in front of you from what YL has said is that this has been looked at from a centralized focus, but as Cliff just said, with the MTA Business Services Center and the whole movement that we have, in terms of moving in a more coordinated fashion, we can, update you further in terms of where we are in the area of IT and some of these other support functions. I think, we share the same vision as you in terms of creating value by having the agencies work more closely together in a more coordinated fashion, both in procurement and other areas.
I just think that on here we should look back. Somebody should go back, please. I don't know who should do this. You're giving out 3 separate procurements here for a total of about I just looked at the numbers, roughly $10 million. I don't believe we've gotten the volume discounts that we would have gotten, and I may be wrong, but on the surface it looks like that we didn't get the volume discounts that we should have gotten if we were giving out a $10 million purchase to Oracle. some of these, one's a 15% discount, one's a 50% discount. I didn't have the time here looking at it, but they're certainly not the 80% discounts you're talking about. And if that's the fact, we should stop these things and we should go back to them and say, look, this is one company, one place, and this is a perfect example right here, and we're doing a tremendous amount of ongoing business with Oracle. And I don't want to waste any more time at the meeting, but I think this should be done before we award these contracts.
The only concern I heard is that what Cliff said was that if we don't do this, you think we're at risk of spending $800,000 more?
Approximately, yeah. It's about 820, I think, if we don't conclude this matter today. Please
That
keep
had
in
to
mind,
do with
Mr.
the
Chairman.
close of the Oracle fiscal year clip, is that correct?
That is correct.
It has to do with the close of their fiscal year and when they book their revenue.
But come on, fellas, we're now, how much business are we doing with Oracle?
Well,
This year, what do you think we're going to do with Oracle this year and next year? PeopleSoft, Oracle, or whatever, the Hyperion, the consolidated company.
I really don't have a number at the top of my head, but I presume it's a big number. What we're looking at is different services. Licenses can be discounted very heavily because they do not involve any out-of-pocket expenses for the company. Labor or consulting or implementation services are very different. Those are very hard to get skills. They're very expensive to maintain, and that's to extrapolate what I said into discounts on the labor side of the house would be going a little too far. I don't think we will be able to get 80% discount on their consulting fees. It's just not realistic.
Mr. Chairman, please keep in mind that in this staff summary, reason why you see different pricing as well is because we have training, we have consultancy work, we have different kind of pricing structures with different kind of services. So that's part of why you see different kinds of pricing and discounts.
Yeah.
And also, just to go back with what Wael pointed out, is that if you remember in the base contract, the master contract, and I forget the total number at this point, but I think we negotiated something like a bit over $36 million in discounts, or monies that we would have had to have paid had we not gone into that master agreement.
I think it may be worthwhile, Commissioner, to go into a little bit on the Long Island Railroad side, where they've done a strategic look ahead for about 3 to 5 years and documented all of their needs in the staff summary that's in the book. So, Mark, if you want to go.
Good morning. When I was thinking about this presentation, I thought, well, what would the questions you might have? First, what are we looking to get approval for? Why are we doing a sole source with Oracle? Why 5 years, which is the question that we just brought up, and the funding issue, what is the funding impact? First, what we have here, it's a 5-year agreement with Oracle for $7.1 million, and it covers licensing for our products, the maintenance, support, training, consulting services, and upgrades for all of our Long Island Railroad Oracle products, which is slightly different than what MTA is looking at. Why Oracle? We've established Oracle as our corporate database throughout the entire railroad. An important benefit of this is Oracle database applications can be integrated with PeopleSoft, which we're always looking at on a going forward basis. And again, that explains why Oracle is the sole source choice for us, because they're uniquely qualified to support their own products. Why 5 years, which is a question that Weil just raised. At the Long Island Railroad, we've really been moving towards a long-term look at our IT strategic needs instead of just on an annual basis. So we issue a 5-year IT strategic business plan, looking very far ahead to the applications we might need. And so that's why we've concluded that it's beneficial for us to firmly establish today that for the next 5 years, our products will be Oracle products. They will be consistent, standardized, and our support will be more efficient for those products. The $7.1 million is divided into 3 categories. $4.8 million is simply the maintenance and support for our existing Oracle applications. $1.1 million is for consulting services that we estimate we would need going forward. which is an area that Wow mentioned is not always, we don't always have the ability to get as strong a discount as we might in other areas. And lastly, $1.1 million is for the Hyperion upgrade that we're looking to do at the Long Island Railroad. You may have heard before that the Long Island Railroad's budgeting system is far behind some of the others in the MTA family, and we desperately need the Hyperion upgrade. And lastly, financially, the Long Island Railroad already contains funds for this project in its financial plan. So that's sort of a synopsis of why we're looking to do this contract with Oracle.
You know, it sounds to me as a business matter as though we're, you know, this is where we are, and this is what we're doing. But I would find it more comforting, quite honestly, if you could answer the question that had been asked of you as to how much product we are in fact purchasing from Oracle, because if you don't know it, you obviously have not had that number in your negotiation with this company over price, and it would strike me that that's basic.
We can do that, Commissioner, and get back to you.
I'm less concerned that I know it than that you and Oracle know it.
I do know a number, Commissioner, but I don't want to misspeak. I think our number is anywhere from $2 to $4 million a year in maintenance.
No. You just said that you got an $11 million, an 80% cut on an $11 million purchase.
Yes.
And you've also said in the course of this morning that you're buying about another $10 million right here. So right there you've got $21 million worth of purchase from Oracle, and it's not, I have no idea what else may be going on in this picture, but I think that that it would be helpful for the MTA as an agency to know the grand total of what it was purchasing from this company, and that I would think would be at least something to mention in further negotiations. I'm sure this is not the last purchase we're going to negotiate with these people.
Understood.
Any more comments, because we had to have a board meeting. Do you want to say something, Edward? Are there any more comments? Otherwise, we really, because of time, we're going to have to move forward. Gary, why don't you go ahead and...
Moving forward, there was also one ratification on page 39 of your books, and that's for software maintenance renewal for the Audit Services Department. So the total of, if there are are there any questions on that particular procurement? If there are no questions, the total procurements for MTA was $7,727,227, and that's for 8 procurements they require.
I got a quick question. I'm sorry, I won't labor on. The Booz Allen Hamilton contract said that there's a significant adverse information and that has not been approved yet by the executive director. Yet we're moving forward on a procurement at the board without approval. That there's a problem.
Cliff,
No, that...
you have this, can you answer the commissioner's...
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, that's what we typically do when we have this kind of situation. We seek board approval, and of course we don't move forward unless...
What's the situation? I don't know what the situation is, yet we're giving approval to move forward. It just says it's significant adverse information.
Well, we can discuss that in closed session if you wish.
Okay, thanks.
See that in here, Lou? Do you want to address this, Lee?
No, I wasn't prepared to address Booz Allen. I wanted to speak to the item before. So why don't we just finish up on Booz Allen? And Cliff, do you have the lead on this item, or who is speaking to the Booz Allen? Or Gary?
Cliff was handling the Booz.
Yes.
Cliff Shockley is handling the Booz Allen, and his indication is that we'd have to do that in executive session.
So why don't you, Jeff, will you do me, Cliff, will you please make sure that the commissioner gets the information that he needs?
Yes, sir.
Prior to the board meeting, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, doing this prior or executive session?
Prior to the board meeting, Cliff Shockley will get back to Mr.
Right. Okay. Make sure you have, Jeff, will you make sure you get the information? If not, please let me know, okay? Okay, so now,
Yeah, just going back to
before we have the vote, would you like to speak?
All the commissioners.
Yeah, I just want to speak on the issue that we spoke to before with Oracle, and we will have a report back to you speaking to the point that Commissioner Page made in terms of how much we acquire from Oracle, as well as the issue of discounting, whether we maximized the size of our dealings with Oracle.
I think that's very fair.
Yeah, so we will do
Not
that.
to me, but I think
I'm concerned
to the Finance Committee.
Of course. I mean, obviously, I'm concerned about the potential, as staff described, of losing $800,000, obviously sensitive to the point you're saying that you don't think that would be at risk. So we'll proceed in a way that we get that information before the end of the month. I think the next board meeting is appropriate, so we can present that to you in a way that you feel comfortable voting.
Right. I think that's fair, Lee, and I think that satisfies certainly me, and I'm sure Commissioner Page, so that's fine.
Self-evident in terms of what needs
So,
to
but what we're going to do now is we're going to move this forward to the full board meeting pending this report from the Executive Director.
Precisely. Great.
A second, please, and a vote, please. Okay, Gary, go ahead. Next one.
There are no items for Metro North. Long Island Railroad has 2 procurements totaling $8,146,336. That includes the Oracle.
And a vote, please. Go ahead, Gary.
No items for Long Island Bus. B&T has 1 procurement. Again, this is the Oracle contract for B&T.
Motion, please. Second, and a vote, please. Go ahead, Gary.
New York City Transit has an action item on page 47 of your books, and this is to establish procedures for governing a pilot proof of payment fare system that will be implemented on the BX12 bus in the Bronx, which is in essence payment before you board the bus.
And a vote, please. So moved. Gary, go ahead.
There is also 1 non-competitive procurement for New York City Transit for $97,882, and that's on page 63 of your book.
And a second, please.
I have a question.
Oh, question, please. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
The is the almost $98,000 part of the 2.6 increase in the operating budget that was due to the SBS, the Select Bus Service?
I would have to defer to Stanley Grill on that. I'm not sure. Is Stanley Grill? I'm not sure, Commissioner Watt, I'm not sure what $2.6 million you're referring to specifically.
Does it say capital? It says capital. Okay, thank you. It's answered. So it's not. Okay.
Motion, please. Second. And a vote, please.
MTA Bus, there are 2 procurements for $4,412,000.
And a vote, please. Aye. So approved.
There are no items for MTA Capital Construction, and for FinTech, we have 2 items. The first is an information item, and Maureen Coyne will give an overview of last year's operations. The second is an action item which requires approval of their financials by this committee.
Okay, welcome.
Okay, I think you have your handout. One second.
Cone of silence.
Okay. Have it? Okay. This is the overview of what we'll cover this morning in this, I promise, very quick presentation. We're here today to advise. Yes. Don't make it. Okay. We have everyone here for questions, so we're here today to advise the MTA Finance Committee of FEMTAC's 2007 activities. A copy of the annual report was sent to you last week, and the report contains the actuarial loss reserve certification and the audited financial statements, which were approved by the Audit Committee last month. These reports can be found in tab 5 of the book. Insurance Watch. Marsh USA was approved by the MTA Board as the master broker and began working with us on August 1st, 2007. The Marsh team set to work immediately on placing the MTA's largest corporate insurance programs, property and excess liability. The marketing and placement of these programs was met with enormous success, both from a savings as well as a coverage terms enhancement standpoint. We were able to secure an additional $100 million in excess liability limits while saving $1.3 million in premium over the expiring policies. As far as our property program, we were able to fully reinsure the program this year, up to $1.25 billion in limits, and we also extended the policy term 6 months in order to move the renewal date outside of the hurricane season. The Terrorism Risk and Insurance Act, or TRIA, was extended by Congress at the end of last year for an additional 7 years, and it was amended to include all domestic acts of terrorism, which previously had been excluded from TRIA. This slide depicts the growth of FEMTAC's assets since its inception. The total assets of FEMTAC have increased $96.6 million, or 22%, over 2006. This increase has been driven primarily by the additional premiums written for the multi-year builder's risk and owner-controlled insurance projects that we have on the 2005 to 2009 capital program, as well as the Second Avenue subway project. And this slide, here we have a breakdown of the assets in each of the FEMTAC accounts as of 3/31/08. The box on the right describes each of the accounts and the insurance programs that they encompass. Now I'd like to introduce Dawn Sylvia from Dwight, who will take us through the 2007 investment results and through the first quarter of 2008.
Thank you. I wanted to start just by bringing you through what the portfolio currently looks like. So we have a pie chart up there showing the composition of all the fixed income and equity sectors that the $300 million portfolio consists of. You can see the largest allocation is to investment-grade corporate bonds at 42% of the portfolio, with one small position that's in high yield. You can see a little less than 1/3% in a security that was downgraded that matures in August of this year. So we're going to continue to hold that for a few more months, but as soon as that matures, the rest of the portfolio will be investment-grade. There is a 5% allocation to equities in the form of iShares that replicate certain indices like the S&P 500 or small cap indices, so that's represented by that 5%. There's also 7.4% in cash, which we received a cash influx at the end of March, which we are now investing and putting to work. The area of focus, I think, that when you get into the structured product, you can see that mortgage-backed securities, commercial mortgage-backed securities, and asset-backed securities represent about a third of the portfolio. And within those, there's been some of them that have showed up in the news recently, so I wanted to kind of address the concerns about, maybe you've heard a lot in the news about subprime holdings, and I wanted to let you know that out of the subprime holdings, which would be found in that asset-backed sector at 8%, of the overall percentage of the portfolio, only 2% are held in subprime. So it's a very small allocation to the overall portfolio. Those securities our analysts have taken a very close look at to make sure that that they started to become uncomfortable with some of the underwriting a few years ago, and they started to really look very closely at how they analyze these securities, and so they've stress tested them through the scenario that we're going through right now within the housing market, but also through future pain that we may experience within the housing market. So they've been able to stress test these securities, and they're comfortable with the overall holdings, and they remain a very small part.
I have a question for you. In this portfolio, are we required to what ratings are we required to hold? Is it AAA, AA? I mean, what from our standpoint? And my question is, if you have downgrades by some of the insurance carriers, that have insured these bonds, and that's why they were AAA, but the underlying credit is now no longer be AAA or AA, whatever your requirement, what is that going to do? And will you have to make forced sales out of this portfolio?
Sure. The investment guidelines currently say that they need to be investment grade at time of purchase. So subsequent downgrades, we generally will call the Laureen or Lodwin and let them know, and if there has been a downgrade, so that everyone is aware. Your second part of your question about the insurance, the mono, I'm assuming you're talking about the monoline insurance. The monoline, when we analyze a security, we don't look just at the monoline wrapper. We analyze the security separate of the monoline, and that's almost icing on the cake. So we make sure that we like the security first. Of all of the securities that are held in here, all of the asset-backed securities, including anything with a monoline, there's only one security that is no longer AAA because it was wrapped by FIGIC, and that is something that is a grand total of $6,000. It's a little tiny piece of a security that's almost paid off completely. So the remainder of the asset-backed securities remain AAA.
Do we know what the underlying credit is of those without the monoline insurance?
No, I mean, there's no. The rating is the rating that usually comes. So after it's been wrapped by the monoline, that becomes the rating. So the security that's in there, that's $6,000, it's been downgraded to triple B. We still think it's money good, but there is no underlying rating associated with that security. The other ones are still AAA based on our stress test and based on the rating agency's stress tests as well. Did I answer your question? Okay. No?
Does anybody else have any questions?
What happens if the pieces that you mentioned that are less than investment grade don't make it up to investment grade in the time allotted?
The guidelines only specify that at time of purchase it needs to be investment grade. So if it's downgraded later, then it becomes more of a judgment call as to whether we think it's going to pay off or we think we should take a big loss to sell something if we don't think it's going to pay off at maturity.
How long is that period of before you actually make that decision?
Usually right the month that it is downgraded, we will let Laureen and Lodwin know that this has happened. And then in the instance of this is the only one we have. It was a Centex security, which it's a corporate bond that is in the housing sector. So they were downgraded, and the fact that it was such a short maturity, we were comfortable continuing to hold.
So you're saying that the subprime you have is all still rated AAA?
Yes.
What's the problem?
And it is a very small overall percentage. When you think in terms of the total portfolio, it's 2%. It's a very small number.
Yeah, but the way I understand it, if the monolines get downgraded, which happened to FIGIC, then this whole portfolio can be, I don't know what percentage of this is you're depending on monoline for the credit rating. The real question that everybody was really asking, and that's, I think, what everybody was alluding at, what happens if the monolines are downgraded, then what's going to happen to the portfolio and what's going to happen to the rating? You're saying that you only know what the ratings are based on the monolines, but the underlying credit, may be very weak without the monolines. I think that's what everybody was alluding to.
Can I just restate that question for a second? If you ignored the insurance on this portfolio and you just looked at the underlying ratings, what would the average overall rating be of this portfolio?
Sure. It would still be the exact same rating. Of the monoline, there's only 2% of the portfolio that has any kind of monoline wrap on it. It is wrapped around a municipal bond that has nothing to do with the structured, what we're having in the structured. It's a taxable municipal bond. So of the asset-backed securities, only half of 1% of the total portfolio is wrapped by monolines. Sure.
Is there any other questions? Gary, you need I'm sorry, Maureen, you assume you're finished, or? I'm sorry.
Just 1 second.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. Going back to the performance on the portfolio, the performance versus the benchmark, that top chart shows the performance on a consolidated basis. It's showing quarter to date, year to date, and over the last 12 months. You can see that over the last 12 months, we're about 34 basis points behind. If you look through March, we had a very good month in April, so we have actually evened that out, and we are ahead a few basis points. So we are keeping pace with the market in terms of the portfolio's overall performance. Any questions?
I think it needs to be said that you did a very good job.
Thank you.
You actually answered the questions that we asked, and I think you answered them very well, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, this is well done compared to what happened last year, which we won't go into, but thank you. Look, this has been a successful program for us. It's a very good presentation, I agree. Gary, you need
There's a separate
here.
action
Right.
item on the financial statements that were approved at Audit Committee last month.
And a vote, please? Aye. So approved. Okay, I think, Gary, is that it? Okay, so then may we please have a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting? A second?
Second.
And a vote, please.
Aye.
Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
We're going to roll right into the board meeting, please. Can everybody disappear and stay here?